Hey,
Welcome to
Jeffrey.
Capitals Uncovered, the Pelle and Martin Steve show talking about geopolitics. Well, we're going to talk about rather alarming developments today. There's a meeting in Helsingborg in Sweden with NATO, and I haven't followed the very latest developments there, but I have read TASS, and as I always do, and TASS apparently the Russian intelligence are claiming that Russia might strike Latvia and the Baltic states unless they stop the Ukrainians or Ukrainian assets, soldiers, whatever, from launching drones from Latvian territory. And what we've seen the last few weeks is there's an escalating series of drone attacks. The Ukrainians have kind of losing on the battlefield, but they're taking out various oil installations and going far into Russia. Russia's huge size is being used against it. So they can't protect all that. And that seems to be changing the mood in Moscow that this thing is just going on and going on. And Putin, I know, has been under criticism for soft pedaling the war, not being too hard line enough and really ending this thing. Um, and we've also got people, who are big in the podcast world, people like John Mearsheimer and Glenn Deason and Scott Ritter, and they've all talked to their Russian sources, and they're hearing things that we could basically be in World War III soon. That the Russians are going to do something. They're going to create deterrence, as the word is. That is, they're not going to accept these pinprick attacks because at some point, I think the Russians fear that longer range missiles might come on stream. And if they don't stop these drones, then those long range missiles will be used against Russia. So they're going to create deterrence. That is, don't mess with us. Maybe a short, sharp stab against NATO very soon. Now, the reason why we've got Johnny Miller, who's a guest I've had on in my previous shows several times, a very entertaining, intelligent, insightful journalist, British journalist in Moscow. You can follow him on his X account, and for the inside story, he really knows Moscow inside and out, has a lot of contacts there. Johnny, you're in Moscow at the moment. Tell us whether, and we're not, and we read the media, so we're only sort of secondhand observers of this. What's the feeling in Moscow? Is this going to happen? Is Russia really going to take on NATO? What's going to happen?
Well, look, you have to remember that over the last 10 years, Russia has shocked the world twice, really, in the last 10 or 12 years. When they took Crimea, they shocked the world. Nobody really expected that. When there was the coup revolution, whatever you want to call it, in Kiev in 2014, Russia annexed or took, some would say liberated, whatever you want to use. It took Crimea. They shocked the world. And then Russia shocked the world again in 2022 when they sent their tanks over the border, invaded, whatever word you want to use. They shocked the world again. Let me tell you, Russia can shock the world again. And you could well have Vladimir Putin coming on television and making a statement and shocking the world again. And it won't be a surprise to many. You started your introduction of the show saying John Mearsheimer, Glenn Deason, Scott Ritter, all these people warning that what could happen. The Russians are making it very, very clear that if you carry on doing what you're doing, we're going to get to a point where we have to retaliate. We simply have no choice. And you asked me what the feeling is in Moscow. There is a growing feeling. I mean, there's even been discussions in the Western press about is Putin's time up, time up. I mean, you've had that for the last 15 years. But actually, on this occasion, there could be some truth to it. Not because there's going to be a change of the Russian government position, but because more hardliners are starting to think we need to take more hardline on this conflict. You had Sergei Karaganov, one of the most important Russian policy thinkers, close associate of Putin, go on
Exactly.
Tucker Carlson show recently, and he did that for a reason. Tucker Carlson is the most important journalist in the world at the moment. Let's be honest. And he went on Tucker Carlson show to make a very clear point. He even threatened that we could think about nuking Europe. And he said that Putin is very religious. So he even criticized Putin. He said, well, Putin's very religious. He doesn't want to, he's very soft. He doesn't want to do these things. So you have very clear statements from important Russian people that we are getting to the end of our patience. and ultimately we're going to have to do something. You can't have 2 more years of thousands of Russian soldiers dying in Donbass for not much territory, and more Russian thinkers are thinking we have the ability to end this, even without nuclear weapons. We have the ability, we could destroy Kiev. We
Mm.
could destroy Kiev. Why aren't we doing that? So you are having a change of thinking in the Russian establishment, yes.
Wow. Well, I mean, George B., who's a CIA, former CIA desk officer, desk chief in the CIA, he was saying that, and it's actually less dramatic in a way because it doesn't involve confronting NATO directly. It says, the Russians they've got huge supplies of missiles and fab glide bombs, which they're not using basically because they don't want to take out civilians or destroy civilian infrastructure, but they could do that, and and they all could also take out the entire government district of Kiev. Um, do you think that that's more likely to, or well, you,
You have to remember, this is still a special military operation. The
right?
West laughs that this is a special military operation, but there's a reason it's still called a special military operation, and that's what I'm saying. You could well have Putin coming on TV at some point saying we are now at war. And war is different than a special military operation. Russia can destroy Kiev. It hasn't done that. I've been in Kiev when the war started, when the Russians had surrounded it. There's only a handful of strikes. If you go to Kiev tomorrow, you wouldn't actually know there's a war on unless there was an airway side. You wouldn't see much damage.
Mm,
There hasn't really been. But all the cities I've been on the front line, I mean, it's apocalyptic. And so Russia has the capability to turn this into a war, and they don't want to do that because they see Ukrainians as their brotherly nation. They feel that they can win this attritional war. Um, but we're getting to the point that that may well happen, and I think a lot of people are going to be surprised of what war really means in Ukraine if that
mm,
does
I
happen.
agree.
And it's very difficult to know, how do the Russians send any more messages?
mm,
How do they do that? I'm sure they're sending messages through back channels.
mm,
They're sending it by sending their most important people on the Tucker Carlson show. Their diplomats at the United Nations are saying it. Everybody is they're making I think Lavrov and other people are making the point very clear. How much clearer do they have to make it?
mm,
And so at one point they're going to get, it's just like how the war started in 2022.
mm,
The Russians were warning for years, let's make
mm,
peace, let's make peace, let's make
mm,
peace. And then they invaded, or whatever word you want to use. And so how many messages do they need to give? And I'm sure they're doing it through back channels as well. So
mm,
that's the worry right now.
mm. Well, I was going to say one thing that a lot of Western commentators. I mean, you wonder if they really believe what they're saying, if they're paid to do it. But the Hamish Breton Gordons of the world saying, Putin's on his last legs. He's on the ropes. Russia's so weak. And then they say Russia never enforces its red lines, and they forget the fact that Russia did react twice by invading Ukraine and seizing Crimea. So they don't ignore their red lines; they're just very patient about it. But it is obviously a problem if you are calm and patient and anti-escalatory, as the Russians have been. They are seen as weak, and the West can just push. And then until, I mean, it's like a conflict between two people, a guy who doesn't want to fight and a guy who wants to fight. And then, of course, when the Russians, if and they do escalate, they'll prove everything, all their detractors' very point that the Russians are aggressors. It's a sort of. But anyway, I'm going to just one last thing. I mean, I saw the Guardian news feed on Russia, which I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's basically a PR operation for Zelensky, isn't it? But they did actually report that Estonia has been trying to shoot down there's drones leaving the country today for Russia, so maybe something's getting through.
Oh, I mean, I was speaking to one of the best known Russian military bloggers who runs one of the major outlets. And he said, and this is about 6 months ago, he said, the war from the Black Sea is going on. I was in Novorossiysk, which is a city in the Black Sea. I was invited to speak at a teachers' conference, actually, randomly, a teacher friend. And outside my window on the Black Sea, the port was being bombed by Ukrainian drones. I didn't report on it. I don't, I don't want to get in trouble from the Russians. But there's a war going on for the Black Sea. There's huge drone strikes all around Russia. But he said to me that the war will now go up to the Baltics, that they'll now start pressuring the Baltics. This really is a kind of global war that you have the Black Sea. Of course, the Black Sea is integral to Russian security. Now the Baltics, which is the other way the Russians get the ships out. So that you kind of have this hybrid war battle going on. The
Mm,
Ukrainians soldiers are used as proxy soldiers to wear down the Russians. The British and others are using all sorts of technology to attack the Russian fleet and places in the Black Sea and places around Russia. And now you're seeing this move up to the Baltics. So there's pressure on Russia on all sides, and Russia is feeling that. At the same time, you also have the Europeans starting saying maybe we should promote peace. So you're in this kind of weird balance at the moment that nobody really knows where it's going to go. That the Europeans want to keep pushing it, pushing it, pushing it, but also there are more realizations that
mm,
Britain and Europe are going to need to make peace at one point. The economies are getting bad, particularly because of Iran. You also have the Iranian conflict, which is another element of this.
mm,
So, but you have this pushing of ideas right now, and nobody really knows where it's going to go. Ultimately, I think the Europeans are going to have to make peace. But you're seeing this pushing at the Baltics now. That's what you're seeing Latvia, all the rest of it. And it's a
mm.
hybrid war right across Eastern Europe.
What's your take, Martin?
Unfortunately, I agree because it's terrifying. From my perspective, I've learned so much from you just now, John. But in addition to that, I agree with you 100%. And that's what's unfortunate. I wish you were wrong. I wish I didn't agree with you. I wish I had cause not to. But I think you've given a masterly account. And many follow up questions for you, of course. The first one is: does anyone in Britain realize this is going on?
I mean, in Britain, I mean, I haven't been back to Britain for a while. I mean, but my feeling is that as I said, you're saying these people. I mean, I'm the only other real British journalist in Russia who has any real impact, apart from myself, sorry to be a bit arrogant, but is the BBC's Steve Rosenberg. But he's not saying anything I'm saying. I don't know what, I don't really follow
No,
him.
he wouldn't. He
But
wouldn't,
I
would
think
he?
he's talking about how the Russian economy is bad, all the rest of it. He's not saying, well, he did do an interview with Sergei Karaganov recently, but so it's not being transmitted back to Britain, what I'm saying and what others are saying, that Russia is reaching another point of you need to stop this or it will escalate. I wrote a post recently that Russia could, I mean, on the back of the Sergei Karaganov interview, that he basically said that we could nuke Germany and nobody would do anything. And he's right. If Russia nuked Germany, you think Article 5 means anything? It doesn't mean anything. The Americans, the British and the French would not destroy themselves in a nuclear war. But that's what Sergei Karaganov was saying, who was suggesting that, we could do this. We have the Russians have the power, the extreme power they have. And it will get to the point where they have to make a choice of ending this.
Mm.
But it's not being transmitted to Britain. I have no confidence in the British and European foreign policy establishments. They are, don't want to be rude, but they're like children. They really just don't understand complex thoughts, not even politics. They don't understand. They don't
Yes.
understand basic um, basic understanding of the situation. So I do fear for that, but I do think also you are seeing this push for peace now in Europe, and I think they're starting to realize, now they're talking about who should we send to talk to the Russians? Should it be Gerhard Schroeder? No, Angela Merkel maybe. So you are seeing this
Mm.
change, and I think ultimately, from pure physics, they are realizing that they have to start talking to Russia.
Do you? I mean, Putin went to see Xi in 2022, just before the invasion of Donbass, and now he's in China right now. Do you think he's trying to get the green light from Xi because his most important ally before going ahead with some kind of escalation?
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting how much they talk. I mean, they're very close. And the China is very, very important to Russia. I mean, they what China thinks is very, very important to Russia. So I don't it's very possible. You don't know what they're talking about, but China's very, very important to Russia. One of the reasons Russia hasn't gone as hard as they could have is because of the international. They don't want too much international, hatred around the world. The pressure of China. No country wants nuclear weapons to be used. No country wants nuclear weapons to be used. When one country starts using nuclear weapons again, the level of danger that escalates around the world
Mm.
because of that is extreme. If the Israelis or the Americans use nukes in Iran or the Russians use nukes in Ukraine, then suddenly nuclear weapons are okay. So nobody wants nuclear weapons to be used. So I'm sure that the Russians will be talking to the Chinese. Their views are very important to them, but what's going on behind the scenes, I can't answer that.
Wow, Martin.
I have a follow-up question, John, in another area too, and that is you've already gone into this. The Baltic states, also Poland and Ukraine. One of the great themes that Pele and I both repeatedly explore is that small states are not innocent states. Gallant little Belgium in 1914 carried out a genocide larger than the Holocaust of the Jewish people in World War II. Poland in the 1930s, gallant Poland had race repression against Ukrainians, Russians, Jews, even Hungarians, and certainly against ethnic Germans. That was worse than anything that occurred in South Africa, even in the apartheid regime. All this was, of course, conveniently swept under the carpet. Serbia was a terrible terrorist state before World War One. One could go into that at length. And all this is swept under, and great nations across Europe came in on behalf of these gallant little allies as they were presented. Uh, and of course, not only that, but as we saw then, and we see with Mr. Netanyahu now, small, gallant little states have leaders who can be psychopaths, who deliberately work and plot, carry out assassinations, terrorist attacks, what have you. And of course, we see what the Ukrainians are doing. Are the Ukrainians capable of trying to pull, or are they actually trying to pull the Europeans and the United States into a world war with Russia?
Well, but the Baltic states, I mean, the Baltic states
Yes.
are nobodies. They're such small states. I mean, I have a friend from Latvia who's a journalist, and these Baltic states, their economies are nothing. He says they're basically controlled by the United States, the economies. So they're nothing countries. And for the European Union to allow Kaja Kallas, who's an Estonian, to run their foreign policy,
Yes.
you
Yes.
think, what are you doing? And it's because that I fear it's the influence of the United States in that. What European would allow an Estonian to run their foreign policy? And Kaja Kallas is not a very impressive politician, obviously. But so it's the influence of the Americans, it's influence of big finance, all the rest of it. Um, but
Well, I mean, the thing is, you expect Denmark. I put Denmark in that category, and Scandinavia. I'm located in Sweden at the moment. They're all going absolutely crazy, and they kept out of the Cold War, and Sweden kept out of World War II by playing a very careful diplomatic game. And then the Finns. I've been writing articles about Finlandization, the Finnish approach to Russia after the war, and they're very, very careful. And now they're run by idiots. I mean, you wonder, and there's almost no discussion about it in Sweden or Scandinavia at all. I mean, it's the debate is even more closed than it is in the UK, I would say.
really,
And I think that MI6 are having a field day in Stockholm. I mean, they were kicked out of European influence with Brexit, and they won it promptly back by NATO. And so they're enormously admired in military circles because everyone's watched James Bond
incredible what's
films.
happened. I mean, the power of the Europeans compared to the Americans has diminished so much over the last 20 years. I don't know the statistics of the economics of it, but it's decreased so much. And essentially, I mean, I was interviewing the Iranian ambassador to Russia last week, was it? And I said to him, I said, what do you think about Europe? It was in the embassy in Moscow, and he said, we want Europe to have a powerful place in the world. We went to the Europeans first about nuclear negotiations. We took the three European powers first, but we found out that they just followed the Americans. We wanted Europe to be, part of the world, but the Europeans just followed. This is the Iranian ambassador to Russia, and he was just, disappointed that we thought that you were sovereign people, but you're not sovereign people. You just follow America, and that's what the Europeans have done. All they've done over the last 20 years. Look at Afghanistan. How did that benefit Europe? Look at Libya. I mean, randomly, I did Grok AI one day and said,
Mm,
would the British economy be better off if we didn't attack Libya?
mm,
It was yes, because we were selling all these weapons to Gaddafi. We had great interest in our oil resources in Libya, but we overthrew Gaddafi. So
mm,
overthrowing Gaddafi in Libya was not in European interest. That damaged the European economy. Syria, look at Syria. Bashar al-Assad was meeting the Queen in London. We had big interests in Syria. Now it's a failed state, and the migration crisis has done huge damage to Europe. What did Iraq, what did Afghanistan do? Nothing. And these wars have been fought for Israeli policy, for American policy, nothing to do with British or European policy. So we've been following the American policy for the last 20 years and damaged our own economy and the war in Russia with Russia as well. Angela Merkel and the French and the Germans wanted peace in Ukraine, in Donbass. We were trying to have peace, but it was the Americans that stopped it. It was the Americans that pushed the revolution coup in 2014 in Maidan in Ukraine. So the Americans have basically made the Europeans fight Russia, messed up the cheap energy from Russia to Europe, made them buy American instead. It's destroyed.
And now we're sort of proxies. I mean, I'm going to say one of the things that almost none of the people I talk to who believe the mainstream media says, well, you've got NATO and the Americans first destroying Iraq and destroying Libya, then destroying Syria through proxies, and then they rock up on Russia's doorstep and say, hey, we're nice guys. We're not offensive. We're defensive. I mean, it's like Frankenstein or something. Someone turns up with a burning torch outside your house. No, we're not going to set fire to it. And I mean, apparently Putin was he saw those, how Gaddafi was sodomized, and killed in a drain pipe. And of course, the very same neocon voices who cheered on the death of Gaddafi with the word dictator had it in for Putin for many years. So he thought, I mean, I don't have any faith in these guys. And almost nobody in the West talks about this. So you're definitely, I mean, there's two views in the sort of podcast realist sphere. One is that, the Europeans, Trump got a lot of things wrong, but he got Ukraine right, and he basically wants peace. And the Europeans don't want peace. And then the other school of thought, which is that, the Americans seem to be washing their hands off it, but actually they're basically just subcontracting the war against Russia to the dumb Europeans. And as long as they can take care of it, they can take a step back. And anyway, they haven't really. I mean, there's the mood music is much better than during Biden, but if you actually look at what Trump has done, it's not very much, is it? So you're definitely part of the latter school of thought that the Americans are pulling the strings behind the scenes.
I think Trump genuinely did want peace. I think
Yes.
I think he did genuinely want peace. But you have this kind of I know you're a globalist kind of half of the CIA still want war. Okay, so
Oh, yeah.
they're still pushing
Not
it.
just half.
Yeah, okay, so probably probably a majority of the CIA still want
Oh,
war.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't disagree with you there. So you've got these different parts of American power. So part of American power wants to carry on the war. I still get all these posts, these replies on my X account, who I think people are linked to people in America. Anyway, so there's definitely a huge part of American power still. The Europeans are so useless, and they've bought into the war, so they kind of feel they can't really stop anymore. And they're part of also this outdated liberal globalist kind of idea, whatever you want to call it. So they're carrying on with it. So you're just having this. So you are just having a carrying on of the war. So I guess I'm part of the latter. I mean, if the Americans really wanted to stop it, they could. But as I said, there's too much of American power that wants it to carry on, and I think, but I think Trump personally has tried. So I don't have any disrespect for Trump. I mean, the Iran war, he's gone totally crazy. But I do respect Trump for trying his best to stop the Iran war, the Ukraine war.
Yeah. Well, so do I. I mean, I'm still have that's anything that hope is anything left. What do you think, Martin?
I fully agree with both of you. John, congratulations, because I find Europeans in general, obviously you see this too, on top of getting everything else wrong, they also get the President of the United States wrong. And the problem with the President of the United States, again, there was a fellow I know in the Middle East who, for obvious reasons, I shall not give his name, and I ended a nearly 50-year friendship with him because in an open chat board, no less, not just even privately, he advocated a solution to all the problems of the world. His solution was to assassinate both President Trump and President Putin. And exactly, John, exactly. And I said, first of all, these are the people holding back world wars, you damned bloody fucking fool. And secondly, you don't know sweet fuck all. And thirdly, you think they're going to be replaced by people more like you? And in America, one of the biggest problems we have, and I see it with people in Britain all over the place, and I appreciate your assessment on this too. One of the many areas the middle class's brains have been so thoroughly washed and dry cleaned is the assumption that President Putin is the source of all evil, and just eliminate him, and all of a sudden you'll have kumbaya loving, exactly, John. They get everything
Look,
back to
well,
front.
also that if you get rid of Trump, I mean, I don't know, was Trump's gone a bit crazy recently, but was Biden any better?
Oh, he
Biden's,
was worse. He
yeah,
was
this
worse.
is, so,
Exactly. You know it
yeah,
from the
I,
perspective you're viewing this from. Okay. I don't think you know my background. I was in Washington for 36 years. I
uh-huh,
became the chief foreign correspondent of the Washington Times. I
uh-huh,
ran United Press International for many years. Uh, I was eminent, not in the media, where, of course, I represented a conservative dissident newspaper, therefore I didn't exist. But in both in three White Houses, the Reagan White House, the first Bush White House, and the Clinton White House, I enjoyed full access because they
uh-huh.
took seriously what I was reporting and what my assessments were, specifically on the US-Russian relations and what was happening and was going to happen or not going to happen in Russia. So that was the background and the perspective I came from.
So you've spent a long time in America. Who is the best president of your lifetime then? Let me ask you that.
In terms of decency, but they were totally ineffective in practice, President Obama, but he was totally blocked and he knew he was totally blocked. Totally blocked. Biden is without question the worst, which I thought would have been impossible after Bush Jr., who was appalling. Reagan and Bush, the first Bush, were both vastly more serious and impressive than they were made out to be. They went along with the deindustrialization policies, but in terms of dealing with the Soviet Union and the breakup of the Soviet Union, they were mature. And they were not looking to break up the Soviet Union. That's very interesting. There was a huge debate, which, for reasons we might go into on another show, or I would happily discuss with you by email or what have you. I
Mhm.
was given a ringside seat on that. And the great debate in the 1980s was, we see the Soviet Union is collapsing. Should we therefore, follow through with its collapse
Mhm.
and help it disintegrate, or should we try and preserve it? And the conclusion that was reached tentatively under Reagan and very decisively under the first President Bush was, we want to keep the Soviet Union going, not as a communist state, but it is evolving in directions we like, and we don't know what will follow up, and we're terrified of a hardline reaction, which they imagine they got with President Putin. But as you point out, they don't dream of what would follow President Putin. They still have no conception of it.
Mm.
And if I may, I wish we could get you to on CNN or PBS. There isn't a chance of it, as you very well know, but I wish we could, because America has many first-class analysts, and you've cited some of the very best of them. Professor Mearsheimer and his associates, Scott Ritter, and his people, Colonel Larry Johnson, my old friend Colonel Doug McGregor. These are outstanding people, and millions of
Yeah.
people watch them. But
Yeah.
nobody in political Washington listens to them. Not at all. Neither among Democrats nor Republicans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Totally frozen out. I mean, have you found any penetration for your assessments in
Well, I don't
Washington?
know. I mean, I get a lot. I've had a lot of phone hacking and death threats. So clearly, people see me as a
That'll be
threat.
the Ukrainians.
I think it's more than that as well. But yeah, but
Yeah, no,
it's
no, exactly. And of
yeah.
course,
But,
APAC, if
so,
you've said nasty things about Mr. Netanyahu.
yeah, no, but so clearly, and all the people you've mentioned do have an influence. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
I've done pretty big work, whatever. But one of the alternative journalists, we are having a bit of an impact. But you do see that complete but then when you still see these politicians and these mainstream journalists. They know some of our work, they see some of our work. All the people you mentioned, I'm basically the same as them. We're all saying the same thing, right?
Mm.
And
Yes.
so we are getting through a bit. And one of us gets on Piers Morgan once or whatever, and it's like, but you still see the complete in the British Foreign Office anyway. That's what I care about most, the British Foreign Office. I'm British. You still see a complete lack of ability to understand reality. And this kind of old-fashioned still Putin, Putin, Putin,
Mm.
Putin, this obsession and a complete lack of understanding of Russia. You know, I'm in Moscow now. I've been here for a few years. It's a wonderful country, Russia. It's doing very well under Putin, by the way. Most people
Yes,
sort
I
of
know.
shrug and say, "Oh, he's done a good job. Maybe we need someone else soon, but you know, he's done a good job." You know, and and that's the reality. And which is more repressive, Russia or Britain now? I don't know. It's pretty similar, to be honest, in terms of arresting journalists and silencing free speech.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you can say anymore that Russia is more repressive. Yes, if I live near the Kremlin, if I go in front of the Kremlin and hold a sign saying I support Zelensky, I'll be arrested at the pulpit,
Right.
okay? But you know, and if you
Just
announce,
like in front of the White House,
Well,
John.
well, if you go in front of British Parliament with a sign saying I support Palestine action, you'll be
right.
arrested. What's the kind of difference,
Or
you
if
know?
you post a tweet about transgender people or something, you know.
Oh, it's
Uh,
absolutely.
I mean, it feels the
Exactly.
climate in Britain feels very, very repressive. I was there a few months ago, but I mean, so yeah, Johnny. So I'm amazed by British mainstream journalists because that's what I care about as well. I mean, do you think that are they stupid or are they lying or are they stupid? You know?
Well, some of them follow me on X. You know, I have quite a good reputation in terms of, apart from a few late night tweets, my work is pretty professional.
Yeah.
So I see who follows me, and I see somebody like my tweets. And I'm like, actually, you know what? Maybe I'm actually, I could actually get into the mainstream. Maybe if I could have toned
Right.
down my work.
Well, do you want to be in the mainstream? Because that's what they're feasting on the fact that all the alternative journalists want to be inside the comfortable room, or the TV
I
sofas, as they say in Sweden.
I could do like a kind of, the furthest left wing mainstream online outlet. Maybe I could get into a bit. But I mean, like, listen, I know some mainstream journalists. I'm sure the other gentleman does as well. Some they're really good people. Like I've been really helped out in war zones by many of them. You know, there's some good people who understand it. And Noam Chomsky said that the best journalists play the media like a violin. They know when to get things out. You know, now that we're having European politicians saying we need to make peace with Russia, you're going to see a few more stories that are a bit more sympathetic to Russia. That's kind of how it works.
Right.
So,
So
but
good
as
journalists know how to play the game. They know that what they're up against,
Oh,
and
of
there
course.
was
well,
there is
I'm going to
I
Of
stop. I'm
course.
going to sacrifice a little bit, but at least to get my story out there, rather than
I
being,
know, yeah,
yeah,
there are journalists in the mainstream. I'm not sure if your other guest knows as well, but I know a journalist in the mainstream who agrees with everything that I say.
right.
Mr.
But he
Miller,
writes
I
one of the main
respect your work
political
and know
papers.
honestly, I have a name, use it, and then you'll remember it more and look it up. I am a mainstream, or rather, I was mainstream for 25 years.
Yeah,
Nearly 30, actually. Yeah,
yeah,
28 to be precise, because I can tell you the precise moment I stopped being mainstream. When I
yeah.
appeared on RT and condemned the Maidan
Uh-huh.
coup in 2014. And then I became unemployable in America for the first
Yeah.
time in 28 years. And I had formerly run large chunks of United Press International, at times all of it. And I had been the chief foreign correspondent of the Washington Times, and I have 3 Pulitzer Prize nominations for international reporting. So yes, I was more or less mainstream, and I traveled
Absolutely.
with presidents, and I've traveled with secretaries of state, and I've
Yeah.
seen presidents of the United States drunk, which is revealing because the body language is sometimes dramatically different from the pose body language otherwise. This is a reason I realize it was a mistake to ever underestimate George Herbert Walker Bush. He was not a prissy, upper class, sheltered, naive, sweet Connecticut gentleman. He was a mean as shit Texas oil man. And
Mm.
that didn't make him evil. Other things did. But what
Martin,
it
sorry, we've
did
got
do
3 minutes
was,
left. I've got to
yes,
wind up there. Johnny, so just to
come
uh,
back. We have much more
wait,
to
are there
talk about and
just to wind
explore with
up?
you.
I will do. I will do.
We've got Putin. We've got elections apparently in September. I mean, will they mean anything? Are they informing the political actions now of the Russian leadership? And is there a sort of alternative to Putin? I mean, does he have a crown prince or anything like that?
No, I mean, what are these? When are these elections? I didn't even know there were elections. I mean, there is.
According to John Helmer, tells us it was
Okay,
September.
Russia's run by the security state, and
Right.
so there is elections in Russia. They are meaningful, important, whatever. But really, Russia's run by the security state, and
Just
Russia.
like America.
Yeah, sure.
Or UK.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think more efficiently, at least the
Yeah,
security
right.
state, the economy seems to be doing very much better over the last 20 years.
Yes,
But
Right.
but in terms of I ask that to people whenever I talk politics now. Has Putin got a successor? Nobody really knows. I mean, I don't think he'll stay longer than his current term, which
Right.
is what his next 3 4 years, because he's getting old as well. And
Right.
Putin's not
Medvedev.
I said that to someone the other day. I said maybe Medvedev, but he's not really respected. Really, I mean, next time I'm on your show, I will try to find a better answer for you, but
Okay.
nobody really knows. There isn't an obvious
Johnny, I'm
successor.
sorry, we got to wind up there because our 40-minute time is
Yeah.
up. Great to have you on. Great to have the Moscow Insider, and talk to you soon. We must come on again.
Great to speak to you both. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thanks a lot, Johnny.
Great to
Thanks.
speak to you both.